Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as usual, let's go over the market, Tesla, all that good stuff, and let's talk about it, see what has happened, what next week can potentially bring to us or for us or whatever. I mean, it's gonna be a pretty interesting week, I think, especially with the investor day on, I believe, Wednesday. March the 1st, which is going to be also quite interesting to see what happens with that. But yeah, all that being said, guys, let's just jump right into it. If you enjoy the video, find it useful, helpful, informative, or whatever, don't forget to hit that like button. It does help a lot. And on top of that, of course, as usual, this is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. Make your own decisions. Do your own research. But all that being said, the market is about to close in just a couple of seconds. Tesla looking like it's going to be closing at about $196.86, which is down about 2.6%, which is more or less, you can argue, roughly in line with the market, give or take. Tech definitely underperforming today, so you can argue Tesla maybe extremely slightly outperforming tech in terms of QQQ, but more or less it's in line with the market, not too bad at all. So let's talk about it. And I have to say, guys, Tesla, it's hanging on for dear life. So remember how I talked about, by the way, PCE numbers came in this morning, were pretty worse than expected, which is not great for the market. That's why we're having this sell off today. But so remember how I talked about that analogy of the bridge yesterday, with these two lines being the support, and how we lost the first one, and now we're pretty much dancing right on the second line. This line, this yellow line, the second one, completely not changed. This I didn't touch it or move it at all. It's been like this since yesterday's video, for instance, or you did video before that, whatever, right? It's the same video, and you can see just how like poetically is dancing on it. You know what I mean? Like, look at this. Like, this pretty much all of today's movements on the 1 hour, which is usually where I draw them. It's just poetically bouncing off of it over and over and over, like bounce, 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 right? Now, that's something important to keep in mind. So I do want to talk about all this and where I think it's headed, for instance, next week, and what I think was going to happen. And, some people are, let's just say, are not going to be happy with what I have to say. Now, obviously, I could be completely wrong, but I do believe Tesla is imminent for I don't know if I want to use the word crash, but definitely a drop, like a pretty damn good drop too, if I do say so myself. So I definitely think it's going to happen. And there's one major thing I will show you guys very soon. Pretty much probably the biggest thing that I think is convincing me that, yeah, the reversal is pretty much here. Like it's not like confirmed, but it's a damn good sign. And all it needs is like that push into that, to the downside just slightly, and it's going to happen for sure. But it's a very, I guess, promising start or sign for the bears. So first and foremost, right, again, we're bouncing off this line. We lost this first support. We're pretty much just barely hanging on to this, potentially like the final real support, if you will. This kind of last line here, /190, that general area is very important to hold for Tesla. As you can see, it's barely holding, held here, barely, held here, barely holding here. So it's, the second this gives, though, it's going to be pretty brutal in my opinion. Now, all that being said, though, right, so, as usual, I usually think Mondays and Fridays tend to rhyme. So because Friday was a pretty red day, to me, that usually means that Monday, like 7 out of 10 times, will also be a red day, which could be the catalyst that finally brings Tesla down. But again, it doesn't mean it always has to happen. Now, all that being said, though, and because Tesla is in a bit of a unique position right now with Investor Day coming up on Wednesday, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of a buy the dip action happening prior, or like maybe up until Wednesday or something, like sometime like early next week. It wouldn't completely shock me if we come back up to 200 one more time to test it, and then ultimately make our way back down. So something along the lines of like this, right? That wouldn't surprise me. Mainly because people are, this happens with Tesla, right? Tesla's, a lot of hype around Tesla. I mean, for a good reason, of course. But nonetheless, people, just buy the dip, Investor Day, guys, it's exciting stuff, which it is. Don't get me wrong, it is. But like, you have to understand where you're buying this quote unquote dip, right? This is not really much of a dip after such a run up. It's just hardly a dip. So keep that in mind, right? So people will probably be buying into it, kind of FOMOing into the Investor Day, with all this excitement. Happens pretty often. And then I think after that is just going to be a massive sell-off. I really do. That's just my opinion, of course. Now, that's just kind of, thinking more of like a psychological thing and just market sentiment and stuff like that. But in terms of just straight technical analysis, you can see we're just barely holding on. But the most important thing to understand, guys, the most important thing that I'm personally looking at right now, isn't this? I was just taking a look at it. I mean, I guess I can bring this up. The daily is still showing lower lows. Right, not looking great. Like the 4 hour, on this move today, on this candle right here, lower lows. It's, it's the bearish divergence is still very much in play. It's slightly less in play actually on like the 1 hour, for instance, right? Which tells me that there is potentially some short-term run-up still potentially there. Like, you know, there might be something brewing still there. You know, again, probably some like FOMO buying the dip kind of thing moving into investor day, which would not surprise me whatsoever. But I do strongly believe that this is just very good. It's going to be very short-lived, and I do believe that this bearish divergence in the longer time frames, like the 3 hour, the 4 hour, especially the daily, is going to play out. Now, the main thing I wanted to show you guys as I remove these lines and everything right here is going to be this. Now, anyone looking at this right now that kind of, you know, understands technical analysis to a certain extent, or knows patterns, or knows like, you know, candle behaviors or whatever, will see something very crucial here. If you don't see it, I will of course explain it, and that's going to be quite simple actually. It's going to be these two candles right here. These two candles right here. These two right here. These two, the one that we just closed for the week, and then last week, right? This right here is a bearish reversal candle setup. This is not a good setup. This is pretty bearish. Again, you know, just because it's here doesn't mean it has to play out bearish. You obviously still need confirmation beyond it to, like, you know, like follow through, if you will. But this is a very bearish setup right here. It's essentially, there's another term for it, but I just look at it as an inside day. There's another term for it. There's so many damn terms. I just keep forgetting all the names for all these different candles. I just remember what they look like. So the volume is pretty low. The volume is pretty low. So, you know, that I guess the bulls can have that for themselves. However, you know, for the bears, they're definitely looking at this and seeing this inside day candle, right? Where this candle this week that just closed, being a red day as well, or a red rather week, is completely within the parameters, like completely within the parameters of this one, like almost perfectly in the parameters, in the middle of it, right? So that's an inside week candle, which is, you know, on the daily, on the weekly, whatever, is usually a reversal sign, especially if this one's green and this one's red. That's usually a pretty damn strong reversal signal, right? You have to keep that in mind. And, you know, these are extremely important to keep in mind, right? For instance, if you just look back, right? So here we had a beautiful hammer candle. It was a red hammer candle, and this was a red hammer candle, a green one, but this was a red one. But we had essentially two hammer candles in a row, which signaled this absolutely astronomical run up that happened very aggressively and very fast, and I mean 100% essentially move up, you know, within like a month almost, or something like that, or just over a month. Astronomical move, right? Or you can take a look up here where we had, you know, a bit more of a bearish candle, right? So for instance, you have, this is like, I believe, an evening star candle, right? I believe it's called, actually, again, I always forget the names, but I believe it's an evening star candle. We have a nice long kind of candle like this, you know, green candle. Then you have a kind of like a candle with a very long wicks, and the actual body of the candle is pretty small. And then, you know, even worse if it's red. And then of course you have essentially the opposite of this candle here. That's like, I believe, called an evening star candle. Let me just Google that just to make sure. I believe it's called that evening star. I could be completely wrong though. Let's double check very quickly here. Yeah, evening stars, right? So this thing right here, essentially, which is more or less what this is right here, right? And then what did this follow up with? Well, it followed up with an astronomical move to the downside from here, right? So that's something else to consider, right? So that's another thing. So if you were to, in theory, play this, you know, from here, like I say, you saw this pattern as the week closed, similar to what we see today, and you're like, wow, okay, that's bad. That's an evening star candle. That's not good. Tesla fell, like, I mean, from literally just the closure of this weekly candle to, like, let's say somewhere, like, let's say not even the bottom of, like, the very bottom, let's say, like, to where roughly, you know, kind of roughly where we bottomed out and roughly reversed, almost a 60% drop, right? Just keep in mind, you have to look at these patterns. They're extremely important to understand and, like, you know, see them coming, right? So that's kind of, you know, what I'm personally seeing right now with this, right? It's essentially an inside day candle on the weekly, you know. So again, when you have these kind of important major reversal type candles forming, you can't just ignore them, man. You cannot just ignore them, right? Because so far they have been playing out pretty nicely. So all that being said though, right? So this is going to be something that's extremely bearish that I will personally be looking at for sure in next week. And I would not be surprised if there's a bit more of a bull trap early next week as people FOMO in for investor day, thinking it's going to be some crazy things, you know, thinking this, thinking that. And then ultimately I do believe that is going to play out to the downside. And I do think it's going to essentially do something like this. And that's essentially the main thing I saw, main thing I'm noticing. And that's by far the main thing I am personally paying attention to, that I think you should be really paying attention to and really caring about. Everything else, in my opinion, is more or less trivial, and that is by far the most important thing on the weekly that I just showed you guys. On top of that, of course, also taking a look at these two trend lines, mainly the one we're currently on right now being pretty much held by thin ice. So just, you know, be very careful by that, well, with that as well. The second this breaks and 190 breaks, the last two real catalysts of holding Tesla up can get pretty ugly. Again, there's not a whole lot of support below. It is going to be a pretty, you know, aggressive fall, which I do think will come down to around the mid 150s or so, give or take. I do think that's where the ultimate goal is. The bearish divergence is just, you know, it's pointing straight down. The RSI looks quite bearish here. I mean, it's above 50, which is not bad, but just very obvious bearish divergence. Is very obviously pointing straight down. I don't know, man. Today's volume is just abysmally low on a, I mean, not a green day. That candle is green, but not a green day. So it's like, I don't know, man. I'm just seeing a lot of signs of a reversal coming along. Maybe I'm biased because, I want it to fall because I'm pretty much all cash. People, I'm sure will be saying that, but I mean, the reason I'm all cash is because I'm expecting this reversal, not because, the other way around. I didn't sell and then look for bearish signs. I sold because I see bearish signs. Very important, to distinguish right there, or, difference, I guess, or whatever. But yeah, that's it for the video, guys. Let me know what you think down below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button as usual. Hopefully you find these videos informative, helpful, whatever. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. And I'll see you for the video on Monday. And I think next week will be a pretty fun one. And I think next week actually could be the start of the downturn. So we'll see. But thanks for watching, guys. Peace.